Welcome to the Walt Wine Sip Up. We host these tastings twice a week on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 4 o'clock Pacific, 7 o'clock Eastern, and all the great times in between. We're excited to have you on today. Thank you so much to those of you who went online and purchased our Sip Up sets so that you can join along with us with those wines. I'm also excited for those of you who just brought any bottle of wine with us to join today. I'm super excited to introduce the winemaker for Walt. This is breaking news. Alison Frichtl has been with us since 2008. She has an incredible resume making wines with Hall, Walt, and she was and remains the Baca winemaker. But I'm excited today to introduce that Alison is now our principal winemaker for Walt Wines. Alison, nice job. Thanks for joining us today.
Great to be here, Jeff. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, how's everything up in Napa right now? I know you're at the winery.
Napa's pretty good. I'm looking out the window. It's cloudy, but the sunshine's coming out. It's a beautiful day.
Excellent, excellent. So how's your cat dealing with you and Bruce being home so often now?
Oh, our cat. You know, our routine hasn't changed that much. I'm still in the office. Bruce has always worked from home. So she's pretty spoiled. I know there's a lot of pets out there right now that are really excited to have both their parents home all the time. But she gets to be spoiled all the time like that.
Yes, yeah, my dog Buster loves it. So you have been making wine with us since 2008. You started as an enologist. You were later our associate winemaker for Hall and Walt. Then you took on basically a research project and were our principal winemaker for Baca Wines for the last 4 years. And today you are the principal winemaker for Walt Wines, which is exciting for me because I get to work with you more closely. But you grew up in the Willamette Valley. That is the dominant region for Pinot Noir and Chardonnay. You've been surrounded by wine for so long. Where do you see Walt now, and what do you want to do?
That's a great question. And it's pretty cool having come full circle from spending my teenage years in the Willamette Valley and really getting my taste for wine at that time. And now here I am. Now I have the opportunity to work with our Shea Vineyard, which is up in Carlton, and visit my family at the same time when I'm up there. So that's a pretty cool opportunity. Like you said, I've been here since the beginning of the Walt brand, so I have some pretty cool perspective on the scope of everything we've worked for these wines. I was here in 2010. I was working as the enologist. Which is a position where I was managing the lab. I was running analysis and taking care of quality control for all the wines. And I remember in 2010, the excitement of the announcement that we were going to start making Pinot Noir. And I also remember that it was basically only a few weeks before harvest that we were told we were going to be making Pinot. So
yeah.
Really excited, and we were like, oh my God.
And terrified at the same time, I'm sure.
But those wines turned out really beautifully. So it's been really cool to be here for the whole journey of Walt, and to really continue the spirit of innovation we have going on with the wines every year, being really creative with different trials and winemaking techniques, and also to continue taking care in really bringing out the individuality of each site and the differences in how Pinot expresses itself based on where it's from.
Yeah, no, I am incredibly excited. I only recently got to join you and Megan in the blending trials. That started a couple of years ago. And so for me, experiencing how you guys have been talking about wine and Pinot Noir specifically, it's really exciting for me. So congratulations. That's a huge, I'm very excited for you. I don't know how excited you are, but I'm very excited. So thank you. Just as a quick note for our viewers who are just joining, we had some problems getting online. We appreciate you joining us a little late. I'm Jeff, the general manager for Walt Wines. I'm joined by Alison Frichtl, who's our winemaker for Walt. We're announcing that today. And you can shop our wines if you're interested in getting any of the wines that we're going to talk about today by going directly online at waltwines.com. We've got some preferred pricing since our tasting rooms are closed right now for you to pick those up, and also dollar shipping anytime you buy 3 bottles or more. Alison, I'd like to toast to you a glass of wine, and I'm starting as close to Oregon as I can get with our corners. So if
Great.
that's okay, I'm gonna hand you this wine, and you can grab it and pour yourself a glass. You got it?
I think I got it.
All right.
Great. This is fun. I'm excited to be tasting a little bit of an older vintage, the 2016.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. I'm gonna grab that back from you. Oh wait, I already did.
Yes. I thought you poured yourself some already.
I may have a little bit before we started. Just, it's one of the things I tried to do to loosen me up. I'm just kidding. So Corners is in a part of the country called the Anderson Valley. Can you walk us through what that is and maybe where it is? And I will make an attempt to try to show people on the map where it might be.
Okay, great. Yeah, thanks for putting the map up. The
Sure.
Anderson Valley is what we consider one of the more northerly, cooler areas that we make Pinot Noir from. And let's see, this vineyard comes from, this is an estate vineyard called The Corners. This is right in the town of Boonville. It's called The Corners. It's really literal because it's just a crossroads and there's four corners. This vineyard is located in a somewhat, for a cool region, it's located in a little bit warmer area of that cool region. And but what keeps what makes it great for Pinot is that it really cools down a lot at night. This is a vineyard that's on gently sloping hillsides, so it has a little bit of elevation, about 300 to 400 feet above sea level. It still gets very foggy at night. It still has a lot of ocean influence. It's only 12 miles from the coast as the crow flies. And so it's those really cold nights that help retain the acidity and the freshness in these wines. And so we're able to grow grapes that create wines with just a tremendous amount of depth and character from this region. What would you have to add to that, Jeff?
Well, I mean, what's always amazing for me is how small the Anderson Valley is. So this is an area that's about an hour and a half north of the Russian River, probably. For those of you who are familiar with the Sonoma wine country, which is much more populous, this is going to be north of that. And then you kind of go down a very harrowing road, Highway 128, a bunch of crossbacks, to an area of California that no one ever goes. And they actually have their own language when you get there, called Bootling. But it's an area that is rarely planted to grapes. On the north end, you see more sparkling wines, you see more aromatic white wines, and it's really just the little area between the middle of the valley and the end of the valley, on the southernmost side where we are, where you see still wines made. And so chasing Anderson Valley as a winery, just trying to buy grapes, was difficult for us in the first couple of years. And then we bought this vineyard and cemented our ability to make these wines. And I love the play of the delicacy and actually the weight of this wine. That's really what drives my palate and what I really enjoy about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's different styles of Pinot, and I think a lot of Pinot nerds are attracted to more cool climate Pinot. And I also am really attracted to that really savory character in this wine. There's a lot of earthiness, and that's definitely coming from the terroir, the combination of climate and aspect and soil composition.
And so when you're talking about aspect, you're talking about how you look into the distance longingly at the vineyard, or what are we talking about?
The gorgeous views.
Yeah.
That it's a little higher elevation, and that it's, the vineyard was laid out to get optimal sunlight on the grapes as well.
Yeah, for sure. When you stand at the new blocks on the very top of the hillside, it's like a black diamond ski slope. And I don't know how you planted it, but it was pretty cool.
That's a great way to describe it. It's pretty thrilling to be up there and looking down, but maybe a little tiring to be walking those rows. Pretty soon here in late summer, I'm going to be walking up and down, tasting those grapes. So
right. Yeah. They're thrilling aspects until you're actually making that walk.
Right.
And yes, exactly. So we did have a quick question come in, and I encourage our viewers to ask questions. Alison is one of the most thoughtful people I know when it comes to everything she's preparing. And so their first question right off the bat was, you mentioned 1,000 miles of Pinot Noir. What does that mean? And just as a moniker, they may be just looking at my box that I have that comes with every bottle of Walt wine, your 1,000-mile box.
1,000 miles of Pinot Noir is and all of the wines have a really distinctive profile.
Yeah, it's amazing for me. You know, I've been with Hall for 14 years, and so learning about Pinot Noir, I knew a lot about Santa Barbara because I was from the Santa Barbara area. That's where I started kind of my wine career. And so to be able to taste those differences all the way through our portfolio, from Oregon, and the only thing that changes is literally where it's grown, right? Same grapes, same type of wine. That's really exciting for me. So the next question that we had was, how do you know when you have a particularly good vintage? So let's stay to the Anderson Valley.
I think there's a lot of different ways to interpret good vintage. Right now we're drinking the 2016.
Yep.
And this was optimal weather. We really didn't have any curveballs. It didn't rain. There weren't heat spikes. I mean, it just like chugged along, and
Yep.
it was it was almost too easy for us. But it produces amazing wines. You know, I think it's up for opinion. Again, when you start talking in the Pinot community, some will like warmer vintages and some will be more attracted to cooler vintages. In warmer vintages, you're going to get a lot more upfront fruit characters. And in the cooler vintages, you're going to get a little bit more austere tannins and a little bit more earthiness, which is kind of what I'm into personally. And I love the challenges of a difficult vintage too, because it really pushes my idea of what is good wine and forces me to think on my feet and think creatively.
Yeah, no, you were bordered by the 2015 vintage, where, you know, nature gave you about 30% less fruit than it would normally give you, and the 17 vintage, which for Pinot Noir was a really hot year, a really warm year.
Spikes for challenge, for sure.
I remember in Anderson Valley checking in with, you know, you and Megan specifically, and she was saying that how grateful she was to be in the wind gap that day and not in the Anderson Valley, because there could be sometimes a 20-degree difference there.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
But that does bring us to our next wine. So we have a special wine today. For those of you who aren't in our wine club, this is a wine that's only available to our members right now. And this is the 2018 Brisa Pinot Noir. And so I will do this again. We're gonna try it again. I will pass this wine over to you.
We're already on the next one. Okay, so now I have to pour it real quick and give it back.
Yes.
Okay,
And then
pouring a nice big glass.
It appeared again.
Oh wait.
There. Oh, there we go. All right.
I'm good at making wine. I don't know about this camera trick.
We're gonna figure this out after the shelter in place is over. We will be like experts at handing bottles of wine from miles and miles away. How's that sound?
I just hope it's not an intelligence test.
I think the fact that we have to do it through Facebook is going to make it a lot more difficult. So this is a wine from the Wind Gap. This is the translation is the Breeze. And so tell us a little bit about that. I'm going to show them a little picture of what that might look like.
Yeah, we gave this one the name The Breeze because it's descriptive of areas that are really conducive to growing high-end Pinot Noir grapes. And it's descriptive of this area too, like Jeff mentioned, it's quite windy. This is an AVA blend, so there's a couple different vineyards that go into it, one of which is what doesn't make our Bob's Ranch Pinot Noir gets blended into this wine. And Bob's Ranch is a perfect example of a vineyard it's just really cold. Those grapes struggle all the way through bloom, through trying to set their berries. It's very foggy. And so that is a really defining aspect of what informs how this wine tastes.
Yeah. So I was there today. I'm going to figure this out, had a point behind me. In the Wind Gap, I was coming back from our tasting room in Sonoma, and I thought it was really topical for us to talk about it today. So this is a really foggy, windy area. The two, again, as you mentioned, the components are the Gap's Crown and Bob's Ranch, which are situated only about 8 miles apart. as the kind of literally as east to west. And it's a fun area for me because I live in the Wind Gap, so it's really sunny behind me. You can't see that because you're looking at the fog, but it is an area that produces small concentrated berries and large berries. So can you explain what melandrage might mean in French, or as we say it in America, chicks and hens?
Yeah, chicks and hens. It's a phenomenon where normally wine grapes have on average 2 seeds in each grape, and it's the seed that stimulates the grape to plump up. And there's some cases a seed doesn't develop and there's just a berry, and the berry stays very small because it doesn't have that stimulus. And those would be what we call the chicks. And that's actually a really favorable mutation for making high-end Pinot because you have a higher skin to pulp ratio. There's more skin and less juice. And skin is where all those delicious flavors are, all the colors. So it results in a really concentrated wine.
So apologize if we just had a bit of a loudness there. I think what you were trying to say is that it's the
mutation where sometimes the grape doesn't develop a seed, so it's still, the grape stays tiny, and so you have to wine actually really like that because it creates more color. All of the goodies, all of the color and flavor compounds are in the skin, so you have more of
yeah. Thank you for that. Appreciate you confirming that. That was great. So we did have a couple questions on the Brisa. So this is, again, 2017 La Brisa Pinot Noir from our wine club shipment. So if you're a member of our wine club, this is an excellent opportunity to be joining because this wine is delicious and I can't wait to send it to you. So what is your favorite part of making Pinot Noir?
My favorite part of making Pinot Noir? That's a good question. It's just such an elegant variety, and that's a big part of why I'm excited to heading up this program starting this year too. So it's really the whole process of being out there and finding that moment where it's perfect ripeness, picking that grape at perfect ripeness, and then you have just coaxing it really gently through the winemaking process. And I think it's that transformation in tank where turning from juice into wine, that's the most exciting part.
Yeah. Process. I was gonna say I think you're glamorizing the a little bit because this is the heartbreak grape, right? You're transitioning from to making a wine that has very thin skins, that doesn't like the heat, it doesn't like the cold, it has a tough time ripening. Yeah. It's very driven on what the terroir is. And then by the time it gets to you, it's all of that crankiness. And then also any other thing that you might find when you're stewarding in either tank or concrete, as you're starting to play with, I know. So you're working with more concrete tanks. And how does that change what fermentation looks like?
We're really excited to be working with concrete tanks. It's a couple years now since we've introduced them and have been actually approaching them by doing some controlled trials too. So we'll take the same lot and we'll ferment the same grapes in what's traditional for us, a stainless steel tank with glycol compared to the concrete tank. And we find that the concrete tends to bring a sense of freshness, which is something we're especially looking for in our Pinots. Freshness to bring some energy to it. During fermentation, it has a lot to do with the thermodynamics, the concrete tank.
Whoa, thermodynamics.
Which means the fermentation doesn't get too hot or too cold. Okay. Really gradual, gentle fermentation for the grapes.
Got it.
And I think that plays a big role in the resulting flavor there. So we're putting some of our most high-end vineyards like Clopepi, like Bob's Ranch, into these relatively small concrete fermenters.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think it was 2018 when you first started experimenting with concrete. And so is there any of that, was any of the wine today that we're trying with La Brisa placed in those concrete fermentation tanks?
Probably.
Yeah.
And what's really distinctive about, for sure the Bob's
Yeah.
vineyard has concrete influence in it. And what's something really interesting about this 2018 La Brisa we're drinking,
Hmm.
you did say 2017 earlier.
Sorry, 2018.
Wait a minute. Um, so the 2018 La Brisa, what's a little bit different about this wine, another thing, a technique we're really excited about, is we're starting to introduce more and more whole cluster fermentation, which is a way to introduce not only the grape berries, but also the stems into the tank. So you're seeing about 15% whole cluster influence in the final product here in this La Brisa. And that came from, we were playing around with it a lot in 2018. So some lots we were doing 25% whole cluster. Some we even did 100% whole cluster on.
Yeah, I
Which
remember that. That was intense.
we found interesting, but maybe a little stylistically extreme. So
Yeah.
we really dialed it in 2018 and have introduced it to our winemaker bag of tricks.
Yeah, you guys are always doing research, actually, which is really exciting. We talked a little bit about the dirt trial in our last episode with Megan, and so I know you guys have been playing with stems, obviously concrete. How many research trials do you guys run a year? I mean, what are we like? Is it dozens? I mean, how many can you keep
Yeah.
track of, and how many actually do anything for our wine?
Well, we actually just recently had a meeting to come up with a list of research trials, and we had to like rein ourselves in. We're so excited about so many different ideas, but there's only so much you can really focus on in any particular vintage too. So one of the things we're going to continue focusing on this year is with our Chardonnays. We're going to continue to look at during malolactic fermentation how frequently we want to be stirring that lees to create the right environment where we're getting those really flinty kind of flavors and aromas.
Yes, absolutely. Without avoiding things like, premature oxidation and all those other things that big winemakers use. They're big winemaker words, right?
Right.
It is always enjoyable for me to learn from you guys because you have the ability to bring big kind of big terms, big scientific words, and I'm sorry if I sound like I don't know what I'm talking about, but I probably don't. And bring it down to a level where I can understand it, where I can really get into it. So if you were stranded on a desert island, which Walt Pinot Noir are you bringing with you?
That's so easy. It's the Shea. I love the Shea. And I don't know if it's because I live there, but there's something, I describe it, it's almost ethereal. I
Yep.
like the texture. I like that color. It's kind of a rose madder, beautiful light color. That's my wine. What's yours?
Yeah. Well, so I travel a lot, obviously, promoting our wines across the country. So Shea is always what I say is my landing wine because I typically have a lot of work to do that night. So I love the thoughtfulness of that wine. It brings me into the right mode where I can kind of get some work done. I think when I'm thinking of La Brisa, which is the wine that we're trying here, I drink this a lot because we have a number of restaurants in the country that carry our wines, and that's really exciting for us. And it has such a great, for me, it's my best friend that I can take to any party, because for the person who is the Pinophile, the expert in Pinot Noir, someone I would say a lot like you, this is a wine that has a great amount of depth of flavor. It has red fruit and dark fruit. It has a little bit of an earthy character. It has a regal mid palate that you get from that Gaps Crown kind of structural component. But it's also very pleasant and very easy drinking. And so for somebody who's just getting into wine and might be a little bit terrified about fine wine, La Brisa is always the best mix of the expert and also just something that's very pleasurable. And so that's why I like the La Brisa, and I drink it a lot being in the field. How about, you know, if you were to select some wines for our next wine club shipment, do you know what those wines would be?
Me?
That was a question from the crowd. I'll answer that one. So the wines that are in our next wine club, because I'm not supposed to ask myself questions, I guess, is our next wine is actually Brisa and Bob's Ranch. So a great way to compare what the character and the opulence of Bob's is against the finesse of Brisa and the fact that it's a regional expression of Pinot Noir. And then you also have Gap's Crown for our Vintners members. And so Gap's Crown is a very rare wine to access, just like Shea or Rosella's. So we've been making wine from Gap's Crown. And so you'll have the play of 8 miles of the Sonoma coast and the Petaluma Wind Gap between our Bob's Ranch and our Gap's Crown Pinot Noir for those Vintner members that are joining us today. Trying to see if we have anything else. We have one more question coming in. It was a tough start, so everyone's a little lazy coming in. All right, so back to Anderson Valley. Do you know any words in Bootling?
I saw that question come through and it made me laugh. I mean, okay, the easy answer is Blue Jay, which is one of our blends, and maybe it's also up there in my favorite Walt wines. So the Blue Jay is the AVA blend, multi-vineyard blend from Anderson Valley, and Blue Jay means buddy or friend. It's a way of saying, hey, Blue Jay, if you want to say, hey, friend, up there.
I love that, and I would just say my favorite word is ball horny. So that means really cheers and good drinking. And I was just going to end it with that. So ball horning to you. Congratulations. Thank you to everyone who joined us today. Cheers. We will be back on tomorrow on the Hall Wines Facebook page talking about Cabernet Sauvignon with Craig and Catherine Hall. That will be entertaining. And then I think you're back on Monday for Baca Wines with Jennifer.
That's right, yeah.
And then we'll be back on Tuesday for Walt Wines. For those joining just for Walt Wines, we will have a very special guest coming to us, a big fan of our wines who travels the world reporting on sports. So a fun special guest that we'll tease today. And again, for anybody who's joining us today, all of these wines are available on waltwines.com. For 3 bottles, we'll ship them to you for $1. We hope that you can see the wines that are on our webpage and get those for you so you can taste. There's still plenty of time. Thanks again, Alison. Appreciate you joining, and congratulations. Look forward to working with you.
It was a lot of fun. Thank you, Jeff.
Anytime. Cheers.